everybody. Welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zulai, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. What a great introduction to a brand new month. We are in April, and this month is dedicated to the theme of education. And what better company to sponsor this month than USI, leaders in education, training, and innovation for today and the pilots of the future. So great to have Josh Olds. He is, let's see, the co-founder, the president. I know there's something else in there that I'm missing, Josh, in your very, very long title. But Josh has been, and USI has been a great friend to the show. I feel like, Josh, you've been on a couple times, including year one when we were with Drone Life, and of course now with AUVSI. So thank you so much for coming back to the show and for sponsoring this month dedicated to education.
No, of course. Thank you so much for having me back. Always have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a great video. And we're going to talk, obviously, this whole entire show about all the things USI is doing. But before we do, Josh, can you just tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I've been leading USI for the last about 6 years. USI started in 2014. So myself actually came from the aviation world. My degree is in aviation. I have an A&P mechanic certificates. I've got my pilot licenses, but I ended up falling into the drone world in about 2010, 2011. And so I flew for Textron Aviation. I also flew anti-piracy work with remotely piloted helicopters. And so my eyes were wide open early in the early stages of this industry to how drone technology is applicable to so many different industries. And so I ended up coming back to the U.S. after some deployments overseas to Africa and taught at Embry-Riddle. And so Embry-Riddle, I taught there for a while and then started USI. And so from this point, USI, I've been here since 2014 is when it started in 15, and then been here full time since 2017.
All right, very cool. And I love the piracy stuff. And I know you're working a lot with the military and some of those ops, and I feel like that experience informs so many different facets of business, honestly, and leadership. So that's super cool. And your academic background really dovetailed nicely into what ultimately you helped co-found USI. So we saw the video, but tell everybody a little bit about USI and the inspiration for it, what you guys do.
Yeah, so USI actually started early days service company, and we realized the service industry was going to be very, very busy. But coming from aviation, safety was one of those things that you had a tremendous appreciation for inside of aviation. And so USI was established to really lay out safety foundations for the remotely piloted aircraft space. Aviation and drones have a lot of parallels, and that was one of the first things I learned. When I fell out of aviation into drone technology, I realized, this is very much aviation, but it actually hit on another love and passion of mine, which was technology. The new sciences and the technologies that were applied to aviation were fascinating to me, and so USI was really stemmed out of this idea that, look, it is new technology. There's very many parallels, but the way safety is applied into remotely piloted technology is very different. Similar veins of thought, human factors, CRM, safety management systems, very similar topics, but how they correlate back to the remotely piloted space are different. Not to mention, we are dealing with a lot of different cultures inside of the remotely piloted space, whereas aviation, you're trained a certain way and you either go through a Part 61 or Part 141 training program. In the drone world, it's very different. You could come at it from the hobbyist recreational space, the technologist space, the DoD, or aviation, and you jump into the remotely piloted space, and it's this melting pot of cultures tied to how does a drone operate and how do we utilize it, all driving back to that ROI. So USI, as a safety company, came at this from aviation is important, process, documentation. The way we create sustainable operations is key to long-term success in the drone industry. USI as a safety company really came in and focused on three main pillars: the organization itself, personnel standards. So what does that look like to fly a multi-rotor versus a big, VTOL type of technology? And then the technology itself, technology is inherently what it is. I mean, it's like the computer on your desktop, right? It has tremendous capability, but developing it in the vein of aviation, it requires a very specific build and design and safety redundancy built into it. So 3 different veins that we focused on at USI, and that's where we've been focused for the last 10 years.
Well, I love how you had the foresight early on, when so many people were thinking of these vehicles as toys. Obviously, because you were doing real world operations, out there on the high seas, you knew that professionalism was going to be key to the future of the industry. And you bake that into your entire model up front. That obviously, plus your general aviation background, as a maintainer. So to have that foresight that this industry would only flourish if it was comprised of professional pilots, just like on the crude side, I think was really, really smart. And you've been doing so much, Josh, to help forge the future of the aviation industry and the drone industry workforce in particular. Tell me a little bit more about how you're contributing to those things. I know this is kind of core to your mission.
Yeah, it's really important to us at USI, and kind of going back to kind of the early days of USI and where it's at today. I mean, we actually have one of our co-founders just came back last year. He rejoined the company. So going into year 10, it's exciting to have Alex Marat. He's our VP
10 years. All right. A decade. That's awesome.
So
Congrats.
it's exciting. Yeah. So we're coming up, this year is our 10th year. We've brought the team back together. And so we're super excited as we're moving forward, because aviation is changing. I mean, emerging technology, I'm often comparing it to like the jet engine, right? Like big advancements in aviation have occurred over the last 120 years of aviation. And you can pinpoint what those technologies were that really drove the industry forward. And so when you look at drone technology, and again, this is we sometimes look at it through, the straw, and we look at it like part 107, and it's low risk, low complexity. But if you take a step away from the straw for a second and say, okay, what is technology, what is drone technology really doing to the aviation industry? It's forcing the aviation industry to look at flying technology through a different pair of glasses. And that pair of glasses is saying, how can we leverage technology to help reduce error, human error? How can we improve how we use aviation technology to drive ROI? And so when you look at that vein and how we drive it forward, that human in the loop becomes one of the key components of long-term, repeatable, sustainable operations. And it all comes down to liability. And that's really, as a safety institute, what we're focused on is how do we mitigate liability to the organization? And that's done through training of the personnel. Again, psychomotor skills are important, but that's a component of the competencies required of the larger operation, which is managing automation, the human machine interface. How involved is the human component in the operation itself? Are they managing multiple aircraft, or are they managing one? What are the emergency and abnormal situations? How do you respond to those? And what kind of redundancies do the technology have to help reduce those human errors, automation errors, technology errors? So as USI, our focus is really how do we scale a professional workforce that is aligned to the risk profiles that are taken on by drone technology, both from a ground perspective, ground risk, but also from an airborne based perspective, in measuring those risks out in a heat map that says, here's the kind of risk profile we have as an organization as we scale this technology internally.
Yeah, absolutely. As the technology continues to evolve, you're absolutely right. I think those stick and rudder skills, if you will become less and less important unless in an emergency. I think that's one of those things that we learn from the military. Even when I, punched out in 2018, you've got all these electronics in the cockpit now. But they were literally training, like, what happens when all that shit goes dark? Like or like for the Navy, hey guys, you still need to know how to read a map. So, like training to all of it, I think from a safety perspective is really key. By the way, Josh, we have a ton of people out there on LinkedIn and YouTube today. So hello, everybody. Thank you for listening in. We appreciate you. And don't forget to chime in to the chat, like let us know where you're coming from, and certainly ask Josh any questions. We're going to get into the USI program right now, Josh. So I want to talk about how your program has evolved. It's been 10 years. You've been doing so many things with academia, and let's kind of walk right through that now. I think would be a good time. Your services and drone certification and training, and basically how they help academia and especially students.
So from a programmatic perspective, one of the things we've done is really focused on the workforce pathway. In other words, for the student in the classroom, what does that pathway look like? In other words, if I'm a student in secondary education and I want to fly drone technology for a living, what does that pathway look like? And sometimes when we look at this industry, we say, well, flying, we're focused on the pilot, the operator, and the reality is there's so many jobs inside of this industry tied to the drone industry. And so being able to explore that at the secondary level says, look, you can be a pilot, but you can also be a technician. You can be a software engineer. You can be a business development, marketing. So the key to all of this is understanding what the pathway looks like and what the risk profile that you're going into. And so we've built a program that really says, look, Part 107 is the requirement to fly for hire, and that is what we call the first rung on the ladder, regardless of where you get your 107. If you're a Part 61 pilot, you go on the FAST Team website and you complete the online quiz. If you don't have that, you go to the FAA testing center and you sit for your Part 107. But that is the first low-hanging fruit of, okay, you have the knowledge to fly for hire. The primary program is the next step. And the primary program is focused on, okay, now you have your Part 107. Let's talk about the technology. Let's talk about the maintenance skill sets, the site survey that needs to be conducted. And that's all about analyzing the operational site and saying, we really need to be focused on how we analyze the site, because that's a major part of risk management, is saying, what are the hazard domains that exist every time we go out and fly the aircraft? That could be ground risk, that could be aircraft risk, that could be airspace risk. Maybe you're flying around houses because it's real estate, or maybe you're in the utility industry. So the primary program was built for low risk, low complexity kind of operations, visual line of sight. And so the image that was just up was the primary program that focused on the first 4 certifications inside of the primary track. And this program is really catered towards secondary and early college students. And the idea behind this is that, look, you may be on a track to go into agriculture, or maybe you're on a track to be a lineman at an electric utility company, or maybe you're in a criminal justice track and you're going to be a public safety officer. The point is, every industry cluster that we have in the United States is somehow using drone technology. It could be for survey, orthomosaic, data, cargo delivery. There's all sorts of use cases of the technology, but the skill sets, the standards that are set as part of that student in the classroom and what they're learning, they all tie back to ASTM standards, NIST standards, FAA requirements, but also loss control data from USAIG. So that's the first track, that primary track.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just kind of those baseline skills. Now, Josh, is this hands-on training, or how does this actually work? I'm a student or I'm an adult learner and I want to participate in this first level coursework. How do I do that?
So it does require flight training. There's a flight training component. It starts as early as the Part 107 program, or what we call safety level 1. We leverage simulation in the early courses, because again, we want the student to understand safe operations, legal operations, to go outside and fly the technology. And so Part 107, the site survey, all of the ground components are done leading into what we call safety level 4, which is visual line of sight flight operations, VSO flight we call it. So flight is hands-on. It's training from what we call a TCO, training course outline, but it basically outlines all the different skill sets and competencies you need to fly that technology, because it's not just the psychomotor skills, it's the process. Can you follow checklists? Can you conduct a risk assessment? Can you provide a mission briefing for that particular operation? So it walks through all of that. These are done inside of the classrooms today through a program we call Train the Trainer. And so the whole mission statement for USI is to empower and enable local regional workforce development. And we do that through Train the Trainer programs, where the instructor goes through the same certifications the students take, but then what we have, what is called an instructor add-on. then instructor add-ons focusing on the fundamentals of instruction. We built one specifically for the remotely piloted space. And then flight training as the instructor of record. And so becoming a flight instructor, kind of like a CFI, you need to understand what you're looking for when a student's operating and the things that you're evaluating, because it's not just knowledge, it's skill set, it's attitudes towards flight. In our world, we call it shared fate. But in aviation, you have a shared fate because you're connected. You're on board that aircraft while it flies. In the remotely piloted space, that you're remotely piloting a technology downrange. And so what we find often in this space is that there's a lack of shared fate from a human factors perspective of the pilot, the individual behind the controls, and that aircraft downrange. If it has an emergency, I can't tell you the number of times where it's like, we set the controller down and the aircraft's gone. There's this lack of responsibility that you have to train into and understanding, tied to that remotely piloted operation. But that is the primary program, is to empower the local instructor to then provide that training to their student.
So number one, Josh, I want to acknowledge Greg Larson's saying hello from AGS. So hey, Greg, I know there's a ton of people on LinkedIn. It's buzzing. So keep those comments coming. We love them. Great to see you out there again, Greg. So this train the trainer, how many, you're in, like, I'm going to say the wrong number, so I'm not even going to say the number, because every time I talk to you, Josh, that number grows. How many states are you in with this kind of first level program, train the trainer?
So with Part 107 or primary programs, we're in all 50 states with the program today.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I feel like when we started, it was like it was like less than half of that. And then the next year was like 35, or something along these lines.
I mean, it started with one. It started with one.
Well, of course, it had to start somewhere. But I mean, yeah, that's amazing. So, and I know a great example here, my hometown, or my home state anyway, not my hometown. It's about an hour and a half drive for me to Buena Vista, Colorado. Taylor from Mountain West UAS. I know he works very closely with the Buena Vista High School, and they're doing great things with your program, training kids out there. So I know he's a huge fan. Obviously, I'm a big fan. But 50 states, wowza. Okay, so you help these teachers. You get in the classrooms. These kids are doing stick and rudder stuff. They're getting to learn checklists, safety management systems, crew risk management, CRM, as you said earlier. Tell me about that next level advanced. What does that look like, and what does that do?
So where primary is really a skill set as part of a career field. So we call it kind of the add-ons, the tool in your toolkit that you're doing as part of a job that you already have, or a career you already have. The advanced track is really focused on the operational component, the safety components tied to advanced operations. Now, advanced operations are aircraft over 20 pounds. This could be beyond visual line of sight, flight over people, anywhere you have an increased amount of risk. This could also be the dollar value of the technology you're flying, because some of these technologies are getting up there in cost, not just from the aircraft, but the payload, the technology.
Yeah, the sensors. I mean, some of these sensors can be like tens of thousands of dollars, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
They can. And when you look at that from an ROI perspective, you want to keep that sensor flying for as long as you possibly can, because that is a very expensive payload. So the advanced track is focused on the next step. So once you get to the end of primary, the idea is, okay, now you have psychomotor skills. You understand the aviation concepts, the electromagnetic spectrum, the data link, free space path loss. You understand the complexities of operating a technology in a visual line of sight capacity. Now we start focusing on, what does BV loss, beyond visual line of sight operations, look like, or advanced risk? How do we measure that from a risk assessment perspective? How do we identify the hazard domains that exist and then deploy that aircraft in a safe, responsible place? And so the advanced program is built for what we call advanced level 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 certifications that make up the advanced track. It is the next step. We've actually got, again, 10 years. We now have high school students that are jumping into the advanced program in Florida. Everything's getting pushed down. We started, by the way, with the primary program, safety level 1, in senior year of high school. This was back in 2015. That is now pushed down to 6th and 7th grade.
No kidding.
Now, again, not every school district is the same, but we've got a lot of middle schoolers that are now learning and understanding and passing certification exams while they prep to take that Part 107 as they get into high school. The advanced track is meant to be the carry-on track to that. So advanced level 1 being that human factors, crew resource management. Advanced safety level 2 is the practical implementation of safety management systems. This is really important as you get into advanced operations, because your package delivery companies, your Part 91 waivers that we see for BVLOS, and even visual line of sight ops, those waivers they demand a safety management system that is akin to the risk profile of the operation. And so understanding as a pilot, a personnel as part of a team, how SMS deploys inside of the program is critical. So that's level 2. Level 3 and level 4 are focused on the aircraft specific training. So think of it like the type rating specific to that airframe. You're going to understand everything from the systems and redundancies. This is like your pilot training, where you have to learn all about the systems on board an aircraft. Because again, if you're going to be able to respond proficiently to an emergency or abnormal situation, you need to understand the systems on board that aircraft, the electrical systems. If there's fuel, you need to understand the fuel and oil system, the generator. You need to understand what's going on with an aircraft, with the data the telemetry is bringing back to you, which is where level 3 comes in. It's all about systems education and simulation of operations of that platform. Level 4 is flight training. Today we do flight training under waiver. And the waivers basically allow you to go downrange. It's incredibly important to us that if a student's going to go into an advanced industry class, they have to prove their ability to fly, their skill set, their proficiency in following checklist procedures, their ability to manage risk. That's done through flight training profiles where there's flight cards. It's very akin to like a Part 141, like traditional crewed aircraft flight training, specifically geared for the remotely piloted space. And this allows you to take any aircraft, be it 25 pounds beyond visual line of sight, or large hybrid fuel 200-pound aircraft, and tie that training profile where the user interface may be different, but how it's operated in a safe, professional, proficient manner is very much the same across technologies. And so that's where that whole advanced program comes in. Today, that's delivered at the collegiate level primarily. And then 4-year universities are deploying that as part of their either certificate, minor, or 4-year degree.
Wow, so what a broad range of education you're providing, all the way down to like the 6th grade level and all the way up to colleges and probably post-grad too, I imagine. For some of those folks doing like advanced degrees and R&D with drones. There's so many now. Every time I turn around, it's like this new interesting use case, and people are realizing, hey, drones can make this better. Like Josh, last month, I don't know if you saw, we had R&D to real world ops theme, and we had Dr. Debbie Saunders from Australia, wildlife drones. And, she started in academia, right? Like she was a conservation ecologist and realized like, hey, I can track these birds better if I had a drone that could, and a sensor that they ultimately designed, that could do this in like essentially swarms of birds and farther distances. So I think the use cases are amazing, and the fact that you're focused on professionalism at every level, I think, is so key. Now, tell me about this badge system. So like, whether I'm in your initial class or this advanced class, along the way, I can accrue these certifications or badges from USI. Can you explain what those are? And frankly, look, from you keep using the term ROI, or the acronym ROI, return on investment. If I'm investing in your training, what's my ROI by being able to show somebody that I have such a badge or a certification?
So great question. And when you look at the certifications, when I reference badges, I'm tying those back to, it's a digital credential. It's something that becomes part of your resume. They renew every 2 years. In that process, we've done a ton of work to make that incredibly easy to renew the certification process. It's knowledge and it's skill set. And the reason these certifications exist is it all started in 2015, where we started this program in Florida, and they're funded certifications, meaning they're approved for funding by the Department of Education, because it's all about developing an ecosystem of workforce where companies within a region can tap into a workforce stream and say, look, these individuals, we know exactly what they know and we know exactly what they can do from a skill set perspective because the certification has validated that through third parties. So all of these credentials are earned because the student sat through third party certification. It was third party proctored. We actually use PSI, a subsidiary of PSI, to do the testing. It's done either remotely or in person. Once an individual passes that assessment, which again is tied to the body of knowledge, the body of knowledge prepares an individual to meet the competencies to sit for certification and pass the exam. The exam, once passed, you receive a digital credential. That digital credential now represents that you've met the requirements of that specific the learning objectives for that program. The assessments are 70 questions, 2-hour exams, and every certification has that assessment tied to it. At the skill set level, for level 4, we actually leverage simulation as part of the psychomotor skill validation inside of a learning management system-based simulation. And then the checklist usage and process is actually validated through multiple choice questions through third-party proctored examination.
So we haven't talked yet about your connections to businesses. I mean, you just kind of offhand referenced that, but I want to be clear with people out there that this is not just a train the trainer, at a lower level for, academics and students, or even at the college level in the advanced. You have specific training programs where you work with enterprise and you work with businesses. Tell us a little bit about those, Josh, and also the certifications or credentials that are tied to that.
Yeah, so what's key to USI is we have 2 verticals of the company, commercial and academic. It is identical. The certifications we offer inside of the corporate world are identical to what's being offered in education. And that was on purpose, right? You want to create relevancy behind the workforce that's being created in academia to the workforce and their use. And so from a train the trainer perspective, we have corporations today that will actually license the curriculum and training programs. Their instructors will be certified as instructors through USI, and they can actually deliver those programs locally. The point of instruction is being able to deliver a program in a standardized fashion. But at the end of the day, the student still has to validate their knowledge through third-party certification. And so it doesn't matter who the instructor is. It matters that they can pass the competency through third-party proctored credential, certification. So today we have alignments into companies. The primary levels really align to electric utility, agriculture, public safety, and infrastructure would probably be the major utilizers of certifications. The pilots that are inside of the corporate companies today are using the exact same primary certifications. Real estate's another one. They're using the same exact certifications that a student is earning at the high school level in the primary track. And that's on purpose, because our message to students is, look, as you come out of secondary education, this is a very technical field, meaning you can go be a maintenance technician, you can go be a pilot, or you can join the industry. But having industry certifications that tie back to the requirements of corporate industry, that alignment is driven through relevancy of you've been certified to fly. The skill set validation is one of the most important things that companies are now realizing is required. If you have 200 or 300 pilots within a corporation, you need to be driving a skill-based standard that says, look, we have 300 pilots. We need everyone trained and standardized in how we deploy that technology internally to mitigate the risk profile we have with all these, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, all these different cultures that are coming into the space, because we're all looking at this technology differently. And 300 individuals, you have a lot of ab initio learners that weren't from aviation or technology, now flying drone technology. Going back to ROI and the cost structure, we want to align everything that we do in a technology side. Why do we go in complete training? We complete training because training is going to help ensure that our operation is sustainable into the future. It's not a 6-month program that will crash an aircraft and suddenly the whole thing shutters. We have a program that we're maintaining the equipment. Our pilots are standardized. We're conducting risk assessments, and that becomes a 3-year program where we're planning in 3 years ahead, not right in front of our face. And that creates a sustainable return on investment for an organization. And so that's talking corporately. The workforce helps feed these programs that are growing. But beyond this, so beyond the relevancy component, it's workforce pathways. And so the advanced pathway, we announced a program last summer with Zipline. and Zipline's package delivery company under Part 135. And that is all about, you complete the advanced track of certifications. That can be at the secondary level, that can be at the post-secondary level, and you will receive an interview with Zipline. We passed.
So how's that going? Josh, I remember that announcement, and I thought it was amazing. Like, I love that not only you're providing the full range of training, but then you also have this nexus to real businesses doing real cool things to get people, to help get people jobs that go through your program. And so how is that partnership going?
It's going great. I mean, anytime you're on the leading edge of an industry, and so for package delivery, you know, the Zipline's on the leading edge of package delivery. And when you have that, you're looking for high caliber talent that can come in and fill that gap and reduce the amount of OJT you can do on site. So
on the job training, by the way, that's a military acronym.
I'm sorry, what's that?
OJT. OJT.
Oh, on the job training.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
So on the job training basically allows you to train somebody, get someone up to speed to take on that job. And we want to reduce the amount of time that somebody spends in on the job training, because that time is then spent flying and operating the technology. The program itself is in, specifically right now, they're in Dallas, Fort Worth, they're in Arkansas, they're in Utah, and those programs are going to be expanding. And so right now it's regional. And that's the goal right now, is as they scale regionally, we have pockets of students all over the country that can fill those roles. So right now it's regional. We just announced another pipeline partnership actually this morning.
I was going to say, hey, everybody, drum roll, first hearing it here, I think. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so we just announced a partnership with Sustainable Skylines this morning, which is a really impressive company. They're operating under Part 91 waiver, but it's a drone banner towing company. And I think the use case is just incredibly unique, but this is an example of a workforce pathway where they require advanced certifications and a private pilot license for that student or that learner or that pilot that's going to be taking that role. But it's a program that's going to scale across, the entire, any shore where you see banner towing happening. This is a drone that's pulling a banner down the beach, and it's unique in that it's a high skill, high wage career field. But they're focused on skill sets. They're focused on the credentials needed to go and fly that technology. It is a great job for anyone with an advanced certification, maybe a private pilot license that wanted to go into aviation, but is like, well, shifting career focus. Again, I fell into the drone industry from aviation. It creates a great aviation track or workforce program, but it's purely focused on operating drone technology, both multi-rotor and fixed wing, but pulling and dragging banners along, the beach for marketing initiatives. So that's brand new. We're going to be pulling visual observer roles for that. Actually require the primary track of certifications. So we'll actually be able to pull students straight out of graduating from high school to be a visual observer on these operations taking place. And so it's actually aligning workforce skill sets at both the intro level all the way up to the advanced level, and providing that opportunity for high skill, high wage career progression that we've been talking about all this time. And there's a lot of these partnerships starting to unfold, which is exciting for me, because again, this was the vision of USI in the early days, was create a workforce that's just an undeniable force in terms of being able to hit the ground running inside of an organization. As this technology continues to scale, the foundational knowledge of the technology and of aviation allows you to hit the ground running, because again, regardless of what that technology is, regardless of the redundancies on board, the skill sets exist to be able to manage emergency and abnormal situations and follow checklists. And so really that scalable workforce is our goal right now. And these new partnerships are just so exciting for us.
I just thought of a new tagline for you: hit the ground running without hitting the ground. At the end of the day, right, it's all about safety. And by the way, everybody, I'm going to divert for a second and put another plug in for Josh, because and selfishly for my Law Tech Connect workshop. Josh and USI have been very strong partners in our Law Tech Connect workshop every year since its inception. We partner with AUVSI at Exponential as a co-located event, and USI is our sole educational partner. Second shameless plug, I authored one of the first things I did in my business when I created it was to write this book for USI that's focused on law and policy in drone operations, unmanned aircraft systems, legal and business considerations. That is kind of my life's work right there, wrapped up in that book. And as part of the educational partnership, USI actually, even if you don't attend my event, which I hope you do, you can buy that book at basically at half price. Go on the AVSI Law Tech Connect registration page, and there's a code there. But all of our scholars, and we have Matrix Space, Caresoft, Promo Drone, and Northern Plains UAS Test Site, are all sponsoring scholars this year, and every one of those scholars is getting a book. And so I love that. So anyway, thank you for everything you're doing, Josh, out there. Thank you for your continued partnership with us and on Law Tech Connect. And oh, by the way, talk about fun taglines. The title of Josh's panel is Protect Yourself from Mayhem. And not only do we have Josh talking about SMS and safety in general, but we've got newcomer Alistair Blundy, who's doing insurance in the eVTOL space, and John Perez from Dark Wolf Solutions talking about cybersecurity. So, and of course, you can't have a Mayhem panel without talking about weather. And our buddies from True Weather Solutions are going to have Tom, who's the VP, Tom Frunix. So, really, I think I missed somebody, but super excited for this. And that's just one of 8 panels that day. So check it out. Registration's still ongoing. Love to have you guys come. Plus happy hour Sunday night. So join us. Josh, besides you, so you guys are going to have a pretty big presence at Expo. I think you do every year. Tell us a little bit about where folks can find you, other than at Law Tech Connect, of course, and meet you in person and chat about this stuff.
Yeah, so we'll have a booth on the floor. Obviously I'll be at Law Tech Connect all day, so really looking forward to that. On Monday, there is a BVLOS panel on Wednesday that I'll also be at. The BVLOS panel is going to have zip lines going to be on there, Census Technologies. We'll love it from PAU. So that panel is going to be more about the different kinds of BVLOS operations that are taking place in our national airspace today. I'll be speaking more to the workforce skill sets, the standardization that we're really focused on, tied to all these different BVLOS operations. We have a booth. The number is to be denumbered. Steph might.
I bet Stephanie's in the background, like rolling her eyes, like, why?
Yeah, she'll kick me. So,
well, hey, everybody, go on the AVSI's website. I'm sure they have all the companies and all the booths numbers. Look at USI and find where they are.
I'll be there all week.
You usually have a big van. Are you going to have a van there this year?
We won't have a mobile command center this year in San Diego. We've had it in the past, when it was in Orlando and I think even Vegas, but the mobile command center. The mobile command center is where we do all of our training ops out of.
Oh, super cool. Well, in any event, definitely everybody check out USI at Law Tech Connect, and of course, running around Expo and at their booth on these panels. It's going to be an awesome week. I can't wait. So you're just not, though, in the United States, Josh. I mean, you guys are global at this point. And I really kind of wanted to close the show with that because, we do have a global audience here. And if I recall, was it Singapore, where you opened up a whole line of effort in Asia? Thailand. Thank you. Thailand. I'm sorry I didn't remember that offhand, but I knew you were in Asia. And tell us about that partnership that you have in Thailand.
Yeah, so we launched a partnership with a company called Drone Vidya, and Drone Vidya is basically becoming an extension of USI, offering training programs inside of Thailand, and their focus is really Pacific Asia. But the goal here in of USI is it's international safety standards tied to technology. So that's been our focus. Is look, there is a regulatory component of this. There's an airspace component of this that is specific to country. But when it comes to safety practices, when it comes to safety management systems and personnel safety and hazard identification, this is global. This is not specific to the U.S. This is not. And so these training standards, working with Drone Vidya to deploy them, is basically breaking out these programs, same certifications that are being offered here in the States. But the point is, it's tied to primary operations, advanced operations. One of the equivalencies, I guess we could draw, is agricultural spraying as an example. Big aircraft, they're carrying heavy amounts of whatever they're carrying for spraying.
Yeah, whatever they're carrying.
It could be a multitude of things, but the point is, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of requirements, and it's one of the more dangerous operations in aviation today, flying traditionally crewed aircraft for agricultural spraying. And so using drone technology is a much safer way to do that from an aviation perspective. And so
yeah.
To that end, advanced programs, primary programs, they're being deployed in Thailand through Dronevidia as the on-ground partner. And we're looking for other partners on that global landscape to deploy programs through. The whole program is built for scalability and train the trainer. We really do want to empower regional workforce development with standards that are foundational to how pilots should go out and fly and technicians should go out and fix.
Well, very cool. I'm actually headed to Amsterdam Drone Week in about 2 weeks. So I'll keep my eye out, Josh, and make some intros as I'm wandering the floor there. By the way, everybody, we will be doing a separate brand, but full crew live stream from Amsterdam. So stay tuned for that as well. Super excited to get to meet some of our European partners. Like, I've talked to so many of them, and some of them I just know virtually. So it's always fun to see people in human form. So really excited about that. But Josh, we are getting super close to the end here. I knew our time would fly by, and as it always does. So before we close out, I'm going to cede the floor to you to kind of wrap us up here, and please include in that, how folks can reach you.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the time. It's always fun to talk about education. If you can't tell, I love the topic. And so when it comes to getting in touch with USI, flyusi.org is the website. Any inquiries, info at flyusi.org. My email is josh.olds@flyusi.org. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I would say one thing about our organization is we've got a team of individuals that are really keen on the mission. And that mission is standardizing and providing opportunities inside of the drone industry to individuals that really want to work with technology within aviation. But the key is high skill, high wage. The money you're going to spend tied to education training has to be commensurate to your salary expectation. And that's why we keep driving it back to return on investment. Everything we do has to have an ROI. And that's where we want this in education, because education drives workforce skill sets that those students can exit and decide if they want to go into industry, go on to college. It gives them options. And I think one of the biggest, most important things we can be doing right now, because again, I really see drone technology akin to the jet engine in aviation. It's going to revolutionize aviation. It's making aerospace careers, which used to be transportation and logistics. It's expanding aerospace careers into every industry cluster that exists.
Absolutely.
And to that end, we want to make sure we're driving aviation safety practices into every aerospace cluster, because in the grand scheme of things, it's all flying in the national airspace, and we want a safe national airspace, but that requires professionalism. It requires just a cognizance of the fact that, look, we're flying technology, we're flying aircraft in the national airspace, and we want to avoid incidents and accidents, because every one of those sets the industry back, months, years. And that's our goal, is to propel the industry forward with standards, organizationally, personnel, technology oriented.
Awesome. Well, protect yourself from mayhem, everybody. Check out Josh's panel at Law Tech Connect. Join us there. See him at Expo 24 in San Diego in a couple of weeks. And new tagline, hit the ground running without hitting the ground. USI, we love you. We thank you, Josh, for sponsoring this month on education. Always fun and a pleasure to talk to you. Everybody out there, we are out here.